Lindsay and welcome to my Flosstube. Today I'm coming to you with a very special edition on my channel. Primarily in my videos I talk about cross stitch. Occasionally there will be other crafts, although there haven't been yet and there aren't going to be today, because today is a very special edition of my Flosstube. Today I will be talking about Nora Corbett and her cross-stitch patterns, which are usually printed under the design name Mirabilia and also printed under the name Nora Corbett. So Nora is an amazing artist who has been creating cross-stitch patterns for, oh my gosh, a really long time now. I would say, I think around 30 years, maybe more actually. She is a beautiful, beautiful artist who does art in all sorts of mediums. And she also, like I said, designs these patterns. And her patterns are primarily fancy ladies, all types of fancy ladies, queens, mermaids, fairies. And she also does some other types of things as well, although I personally am a huge fan of a fancy lady, so that's where I tend to gravitate. Anyway, so in a few weeks, actually in like 2 weeks, I'm super excited, a little over 2 weeks, I will be going to the first annual Queen City Stitch Retreat, which is being held in Charlotte and is being co-hosted by Amy of Fiber Arts Amy and Maggie of Kitschy Whips. If you have not watched their floss tubes, you should. They're awesome. Maggie is frickin' hilarious and Amy is the absolute sweetest. And so, like I said, they will be hosting this retreat, and this year, the inaugural year, is actually Mirabilia themed. And coolest thing, Nora Corbett is actually going to be at the retreat. Oh my god, you guys, I'm so excited. It's gonna be so awesome. Okay, so Nora Corbett is gonna be there, and this year the retreat is Mira and Nora themed. So I thought that I would do a little Mira/Nora parade where I show off all of my Mira and Nora finishes, my whips, and the projects that I currently have kitted up, so you guys can help me decide what to bring with me. So just a little bit more explanation. Like I said, these patterns are fancy lady patterns. Most of Nora's patterns feature DMC, and she also loves to use metallics and beading, so lots of Krynics, and usually Mill Hill beads. She also tends to include a Karen water lily or two. Those are variegated silks, and you will see some of them as I do the parade and I hold up some of my kitted projects. So the difference between Mirabilia and Nora Corbett patterns is that the Nora Corbett imprint tends to be slightly smaller patterns. They can often fit on a fat eighth of fabric, and they're slightly less complex than a full Mirabilia. The Mirabilia patterns are much larger. They often involve metallics. Usually they're called for Krynic, so Krynic, beading, water lilies. There are fractional stitches in them, although usually not a lot. Although honestly, both Mira and Nora patterns are really beautiful. I would recommend, if you're looking to get into stitching fancy ladies, starting with a couple of Nora Corbett patterns is a great way to start. That's where I started, and you'll see my first couple of finishes in a little bit. So let's get started. Alrighty, so first I want to show off my finishes and current whips. So I started stitching in 2019, yeah, in the summer of 2019. So I've not been stitching for very long, only about 4 years, and I don't remember when I first heard of Mirabilia and Nora Corbett, but I am very much into fancy ladies. I'm like, since I was a child, I've been obsessed with like weddings and wedding dresses especially, and I loved dressing up my Barbies, and I was into fashion and fairies and mermaids, and I'm very girly in that way. And so I think what happened was, like, I went looking for like a bride cross-stitch pattern, or I don't remember, or maybe I came across it on Flosstube, I'm not sure, but ever since I first saw her patterns, I really, really loved them. And I was pretty intimidated when I first saw them because, like I said, they have metallics, they have beading, they are big, and I was like, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to do any of these things. So the first pattern that I chose, I thought would be a good start. So it is a Nora Corbett pattern called Ophelia's Pearl. And I chose it because I loved the color palette. I knew that it was a Nora pattern, so it was going to be a little bit simpler than a full-on Mirabilia. And although it did have beading, it did not have any Krynic or metallics in it, and there were not a lot of fractional stitches. And I bought that as a birthday gift to myself in May of 2020. And I finished her since then. And here, so this is my very first Nora Corbett finish. This is Ophelia's Pearl. She is absolutely gorgeous. It's funny, I feel like I don't see a lot of people stitching her, which I'm surprised by because she's a mermaid, but she's like a smaller mermaid, and she is just beautiful. I absolutely love all of the colors. So she is stitched using all of the called for items. So this is the called for fabric, which is Water Lily by Witchelt. I stitched her on a 28 count Lugana. And these are all the called for DMCs and all of the called for beads. She does not call for any silks or metallics. And I just want to sort of zoom in a little bit on different sections of her. Like, look at that gorgeous, that headpiece is just beautiful. The way that Nora blends color, especially like you can see in these ribbons and in her fins, is just gorgeous. I really love this pattern. I want to get it professionally framed. I think she is absolutely beautiful. I'm so glad that she was my first Nora pattern and my first Nora finish. And of course, the minute I started stitching her, I fell in love. It was super enjoyable. And I started buying patterns because why not, right? I'm totally going to stitch all of them, right? Yes, definitely. No, not really, but this was a really good introduction. And I will say too, I was super intimidated. I finished all of the stitching. I did all the back stitching. And then I was like, oh God, I have to do the beading. And what I learned working on her, and what I am here to tell any of you who are thinking about doing a Nora or a Mira or thinking about doing any project with beading, is that it's actually really easy. You are essentially doing a cross stitch, except you're putting a bead on the needle in between. So you're essentially doing a half stitch, and before you come back down, so you come up, you put a bead on the needle and you come back down, and that puts the bead onto your piece. So it's actually a lot simpler than I thought it was. I assumed it was going to be this hard, complicated thing, and it wasn't. I actually really enjoy beading. It takes me more time than stitching, but I find it very meditative because, you know, you pick up a bead, you put it on your needle, you finish the stitch. You pick up another bead, you put it on your needle, you finish the stitch. So it's actually a very relaxing process. In the pieces that I have worked on, I have chosen to do all of my stitching first and then do backstitch and beading last. You'll see I don't have very many finishes, or whips for that matter, that are Miras or Noras, but I do have a lot kitted up. So that was my first one, Ophelia's Pearl. Y'all should totally get on stitching her because she is, like I said, she's just gorgeous. Oh, interestingly enough too, I realized another difference between Miras and Noras is if you look, there's like a space where her face should be, but it's sort of blank. I'm not sure if this is completely true, but I do know that on most of the Noras that I've seen, either they don't have a face at all, or the face is just sort of an outline and it's not very detailed, whereas Mirabilias have much more detailed faces, which usually involve quite a bit of backstitching. Oh, the other thing I will say is that a lot of folks who stitch Miras and Noras stitch the skin over one. So they will stitch on like a 28 count and this is stitched over two, but then they will go in and stitch the skin over one to give a smoother look. I actually like the way the skin looks over two. Stitching over one is kind of a pain and I didn't want to do it. I tried a small section, and the thing about stitching over one is that you can't just split each stitch into 4 little stitches because it looks sort of weird and blocky. You have to be more intentional about how you're blending, and I just didn't feel prepared to do that. And then once I did the skin over too, I actually really liked the way that it looked. So again, I'm bringing this closer so you can see that skin is over too. And when you hold it from far away, I mean, she looks beautiful. She really looks beautiful. So that was my first finish and my first foray into Nora Corbett. This was also before I thought about really putting any of these patterns on like more exciting fabric. But as I watched Flosstube, I saw other people really branching out with their fabrics, especially Maggie of Kitschy Whips and actually Amy as well, have both done some really beautiful, bold fabric choices for their Miras and Noras. So definitely go check them out. So that was my first finish. And then my second finish, if you watch my channel, you've seen it. This was a piece that I picked up this year and actually finished. And this is Sea Witch, another Nora Corbett. Now, all of these patterns are called for on, I believe it's 32 count linen. And most of the patterns say, you know, model stitched on 32 count linen, 16 count can be substituted. 16 count Aida can be substituted. Now, here is what I will say, and listen very carefully. You can stitch a Nora or a Mira on any fabric that you want. Seriously, you can. Now, if you stitch on 36 count or on 40 count, it's going to be real tight and you're going to want smaller beads than what's called for, or maybe to replace the beads with metallics because the big beads are not going to fit, but you can stitch them on that if you want. If you want to stitch them on 11 count Aida, you can do that too and just use more beads and more floss. It is up to you. Don't let fear of linen or fear of Lugana or fear of like not using the right fabric hold you back. Pick out the fabric that you're comfortable stitching on and use that, honestly. And I say that as a preface to this piece because when I got my Sea Witch, I wanted to stitch her on like a oceany, like maybe actually like a teal green fabric like my shirt. And then when I was at the Steel City Stitchers retreat in March, I found a beautiful one-off piece of fabric that I decided to use for her. So here is, I'm like reaching over to my table over here. So here is my finish on Sea Witch, which is a Nora Corbett pattern again. And as you can see, she's on like a purpley black fabric. This fabric was a one-off cut that the Crafty You had at the Steel City Stitchers retreat. And this is actually a 14 count Aida. So again, you do not have to stitch these on linen or Lugana. You can stitch them on Aida. And especially because this was a darker fabric I wanted to stitch, I was happy to be stitching this on Aida because it can be harder to see, especially in like a tighter weave. So I'm just gonna bring her a little closer so you can see some of the detail. Scoot, scoot. And you can see, here it is, it's 14 count Aida, like right there, there you go. And again, she is gorgeous. I love the way the green just glows on this fabric. I will say I did not expect this, but these tentacles were actually like, here, I'm gonna scoot back. Okay, there we go. These tentacles were actually more confetti than I was expecting because if you look, like all of these little sections here are like 4 colors of green. So they sort of are a gradient from the black to the lightest green, and this is why Nora's patterns are gorgeous because the way that she blends and shades is just beautiful. And the colors that she chooses are so cool. But it also means that sometimes you're doing a lot of colors in a small area so that you get that beautiful blend. Now, this piece did feature some fractional stitches. I'm looking to see if I can see where any of them were. You probably won't even be able to see it, but I'm going to scoot forward again and show you, like in her face, yeah, you actually can see a little bit. There are some fractional stitches like in her face, in her hand/claws. There are some fractional stitches behind the back stitching. And you can actually do fractional stitches on Ada. Now, in order to learn how to do fractionals and beading, I honestly just looked it up on YouTube. I Googled / searched on YouTube, like how to bead cross stitch. And then I watched 17 million videos and, you know, I looked up like how to do fractional stitches. I am a very visual learner. Like if I'm doing origami, for example, like I can't follow a diagram. I need to see someone doing it. So I found the videos on YouTube to be incredibly helpful. I don't know how people figured this out before the internet. Like I guess you had to go to a cross stitch store and beg someone to teach you. Thank God for YouTube, honestly. But yeah, so she does have some fractional stitches in her and you can do that on Ada. It is possible. You end up piercing the fibers that make up the fabric, but it doesn't hurt the fabric. It doesn't hurt your stitching and it still looks gorgeous. So I love the way she came out. I was actually thinking it might be cool to do her in like an oval or a circular frame. I don't know, man. It would have to be a pretty big oval because the tentacles are pretty wide, but goodness, she's gorgeous. And again, this is a Nora Corbett pattern, so no metallics. There's just beading and DMCs, and so you can see like the shine in the tentacles. That's all beading. It's really, I wish it showed up better on camera because it's like really gorgeous in person, and it just sparkles and glows in person. So those are my 2 finishes. So that's it. Those are the only, wobbly camera. So those are actually my only 2 finishes. Only. Those are my 2 finishes. Now I have currently 2 works in progress and a butt ton of kitted projects. So I'm going to show a bunch of those off and I'm going to show off my whips. And then after that is the section where you guys come in. So I am flying to Charlotte, which I am not a big like long road trip person. I don't like hate them if I'm not driving, because if I'm not driving, then I can stitch, I can sleep, whatever. But if I'm driving, like 4 or 5 hours is my max. I get super bored, I get tired, I fall asleep, like it's not safe, and I arrive like very grumpy. So I'm flying to Charlotte and I utterly refuse to check any of my needlework because fuck no, like if there is a possibility that it could get lost, like absolutely not. So I will be taking a carry-on bag with all of my needlework in it, which means that I cannot bring every single Mira and Nora project that I have as much as I might want to, especially because I have to fit things like, you know, clothes and whatever else. So that sucks. But that being said, I'm going to need to decide like what should I bring? What might I want to start while I'm there? So I'm going to show you my whips and then we're going to go through all of my kitted projects and take a look at some fabric options and take a look at the patterns and sort of see, and I'd be curious to hear from all of you what you think I should bring, what looks like a good possible new start. And maybe also, you know, if you're working on any of these, if you want to sal them, I'm into it. I love a sal. And it's also just fun. Like before I started doing Flosstube, I was like, oh, okay, I guess like a stitch along is fun, but just chatting with people about the experience of stitching and like seeing what other people are working on, it actually is really fun. So yeah. All right. So those are my finishes. Now onto my whips. I'm hoping to do some sort of like video transition here. Whips. Woo. So right now I am working on one Nora Corbett pattern and one Mirabilia pattern. It's my first Mirabilia. And if you've been watching my channel, you've seen it, you're gonna see it again. I've gotten in some really amazing progress and I'm very excited to show it off. But so my current Nora whip, Nora Corbett, that's the smaller patterns, is called Junebug. And this is Junebug. She's very cute. I love her. Look at her. She's so cute. And you know, I was not going to stitch her even though I was like, oh, she's very cute, whatever, I had a lot of other ones. And then I saw the one that Maggie did and I had to stitch her. And in fact, I saw the one that Maggie did and was like, oh my God, I have to do it on the same fabric. So I've told this story in other videos, but I'm going to tell it again. I was recently at Stitch New Jersey with Maggie, and she had the other half of the fabric that she had stitched her June bug on, and she actually had already started another Nora on it. She had like a few hundred stitches in, and we went and looked at Grace Notes fabric, which this fabric is a Grace Notes fabric. So we went and looked at Grace Notes fabric, and they had the color, but it wasn't exactly the same because the piece that Maggie had was from the Fabric of the Month Club, and they had like changed the recipe a little bit, and it was just different. And I did not like it as much. And I complained, and I was like, I guess I'll just have to go look for something else. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do because I just love your June bug so much. And Maggie was like, I also love my June bug so much. I'll tell you what. If you are willing to frog out the progress that I have made on this other piece, I will give you my other half of fabric. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And Maggie, the beautiful, generous soul that she is, said, I would do anything for Junebug. And I said, okay, sure, I would do anything for Junebug too. I'll frog it out. So generously, she gave me her whip, and I frogged out her stitching and started my own Junebug. So just another flash of the pattern. Here's Junebug again. And she actually is a unique Nora in that this middle section here actually is a Krynic. So she does use one metallic and then I think like one bead color. There's some of this purple is beading. And there's one Nora Corbett treasure, sorry, Mill Hill treasure right in the middle, which is like a specialty shaped bead. So she's actually really easy to kit up. She's quite a bit of DMC. Here's the supply list. She's like quite a bit of DMC, but one Krynic, one bead, one treasure. So easy to kit up and easy to find. I found the stuff for her just on 1, 2, 3 stitch. And here is my whip so far. I have just started on her skirt, and I will definitely be bringing this with me to the retreat. I want to work on it with Maggie while we're there. I want to get in some good progress on her. I love her. She's fun to stitch on. I love the purples. She's going to be beautiful when she's done. And like, I feel like this green fabric is so fun. I had initially started her on a brown and I just was like, boring, but this fabric is beautiful. This is Vivace by Grace Notes Fabric. Now I will say the current color of Vivace is not exactly this. This has more blue in it than the current Vivace does. Although I will also say that looking at that fabric, had I not seen this from Maggie, I would have been like, oh, this is really pretty. Like I could totally do that. But I had a color in mind. It was this, and here we are. So that is my Nora Corbett whip, and my Mirabilia whip. Oh, there we go. Okay. So my Mirabilia whip is one that I've been talking about on this channel for a while. And I've been working on her steadily. I started her back in November or December, realizing that this retreat was coming up and being like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to have her finished for the retreat? Ha! No, she will not be finished for the retreat. Now, here's what I'll say. If I were to stitch on her monogamously, maybe she would be done, but I am not a monogamous stitcher. Also, I've said this before, I'll say it again. God, I love a big dress. I'm also really into the Queen of Hearts. She's my favorite Disney villain, and I think she's sort of funny. One of the reasons that she's my favorite Disney villain is because she's comical in addition to being evil. And the color palette of the Queen Bee, which is my Mira, is very much reminiscent of the Queen of Hearts. So this is the product photo. So I will also say this, all Mira and Nora patterns, which like I said, are released by Witchelt, which is a needlework company. So all of the called for fabrics are by Witchelt, and they do, I believe they do the product photography and like the piece photography that ends up on the pattern, I will tell you right off the bat that these photos do not do these patterns justice. A, you get absolutely no idea of the scale. And B, you just can't see a lot of the detail. You don't really get to see like the beautiful like depth of color and blending that Nora gets. I mean, even like I can hold this up, but you can even see, and it's blown out a little bit by the ring light, but like you can see like there's just like, it doesn't look like there's a lot of detail in her ruff, or like, you know, even when I bring it really close to the camera, like it's just not, yeah, it's just not a lot of detail, unfortunately. And when you actually see the patterns and the stitching in person, it's absolutely incredible. So here's where I'm at on my queen bee. I've actually made a lot of progress since my last Flosstube because I was like, okay, I really want to push and get as much done as I can before the retreat. So I am stitching her on 32 count Lugana called Dark Gilded from Mystic Fabrics. I really wanted a fabric that went with the queen bee theme, so I thought it would be beautiful, especially with the reds and the golds in her dress, to do like a honey colored fabric. So I am doing this on, like I said, Dark Gilded, and here is my progress, you guys. I finished her dress. Well, I finished the stitching on her dress. Yes. Okay. So like I said, I finished the stitching on her dress. I'm going to bring her closer. Now the spaces there are for, there's like a pillar. There's two pillars and a big honeycomb structure above her head. I'm saving those for last. So I finished stitching her whole dress, and I started putting in, I finished her whole face except for the back stitching, and I started putting in the big ruff that goes around her neck. So there she is. That's showing up pretty true to color. It's like a little warmer in person, I would say, but back here, that's pretty true to color. You guys, look how gorgeous she is. She is beautiful. And I have to say, I have not seen a lot of people stitch her. The redneck bifocal stitcher is working on her right now, and I think I was gonna say one more person, but I actually think the person I'm thinking of is the redneck bifocal stitcher, whose name I believe is Shannon, I think. But other than that, you just don't see her stitch that often, and I'm not sure why. I will say this dress is huge. Like when I counted up the stitches, I realized like this is probably, I don't know, like 5,000 stitches of almost full coverage stitching. The holes are for metallics and beading. But like, oh, I got a dog hair on there. Dog glitter. But like this dress is big. She a big dress, and I haven't even gotten to, so I'm gonna like hold her up here. Oh, my arms are getting tired already. Okay, so you can see like the holes in the dress. Hold on, I'm gonna do this. You can see like the hole here where the pillar is gonna go. So like there's a pillar that's gonna go up here, and then there's a whole honeycomb structure that goes above her head that's gonna cover like in here. Here I'm gonna, whoop. There's a whole honeycomb structure that's gonna go in here that's gonna cover in here. So in the image you can see like there is a lot more stitching to do because there's these pillars, there's this whole honeycomb structure. This all has like a bunch of, this is all beads. There's like these extra spots. I just almost tried to zoom in with my fingers. That's ridiculous. But there's like extra, these like darker spots are actually beading. The bees are all beaded. So after I finish the fancy lady, then there's the whole honeycomb structure to do. But damn, she is going to be so gorgeous when she's done. And I just love her. Like, I just love her. And she's been a joy to stitch, honestly. She's been so much fun to stitch. And you'll see, too, from a lot of my kitted up projects, like, I'm a sucker. I'm such a sucker for a big dress. I'm such a sucker for a big dress. So this is Queen Bee. Now my goal for the retreat is to get as much stitched on her as possible. I want to try I'm gonna push, 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 and I want to try and get all of the cross stitching done, like all of the regular cross stitching with the DMC done before the retreat, and bring her with all of her stuff. But I want to try and get like all the DMC stitched into the actual queen before I go. So we'll see. I'm gonna be working on her a lot in the next few weeks, which I am definitely not mad about. But yeah, so those are my two Mira Nora whips. And now we get to the fun part, which is the kit parade. Welcome to the kit parade portion of my video. All right, so the first piece that I'm going to show you guys is a piece that I know that I'm going to bring to the retreat. Oh, and before I start, I just want to apologize in advance. I have a lot of these pieces in like the mesh Amazon bags, and a lot of them have zippers on them. A lot of them are in some sort of plastic, so there might be crinkling and zippering and crinkle sounds and all of that stuff. I am sorry about that. I just like literally could not get it all out because it's of the volume of stuff. So I apologize for the crinkling sounds. Hopefully the eye candy will make up for it. Okay, so the first piece that I'm going to show you is a piece that I'm actually going to be working on with Melissa of Sheba Designs. Sheba Designs is an amazing bag company if you've never bought her bags. I believe right now her Etsy shop is actually on vacation because she's coming to the retreat and like she's busy getting ready for the retreat, but she's an amazing bag maker. She's in Canada, but she does ship to the US. I love her bags. She tends to get like really fun fabric. She gets all the Tula Pink fabrics, which I love. And she's also just a really rad human. I met her at the Grace Notes fabric retreat. And when I met her, one of the things that Melissa was saying was that she actually stitches the pixies, and she's been stitching a bunch of the pixies and I think Mira's too, actually. So she's stitched a bunch of Noras and a bunch of Miras, and her plan is to actually stitch them tiny because she does not have a lot of wall space. And I said, oh, how do you even do that? And she said, well, I stitch them on like 40 count or 1/1 on 28 count. And instead of using the beads, I use metallics in the place of the beads, and they're still shiny and sparkly, but that way I can stitch them up a lot smaller. And I said, oh, that's so much fun. I totally want to do that. And she said, okay, let's do it. So I picked out a pixie, a Nora Corbett pixie, to start at the retreat with her. And we are going to be doing the Petite Pixie Sal. So anyone who wants to join us is welcome. It's the Petite Pixie Sal. So I'll put the hashtag on the bottom of the screen. It's probably already up there. And the piece that I chose is Autumn Blaze. So here she is. Here's Autumn Blaze. She's beautiful. Is she a mermaid? Is she a fairy? Is she both? Who knows? I don't know. I think the called for is water lily. Which is fine, like it would be fine, but I really, given that she sort of has that like mermaid fairy vibe going on, and those pinks and oranges, I really wanted to pick out a more vibrant and more interesting fabric for her. So I have a few fabric options, which I would love to show to you, my adoring audience, and get some feedback on. So keep in mind that she will be stitched 1/1 on these fabrics. So they're all, I believe they're all 28 count. And like I said, she will be getting stitched eensy teensy on these beautiful fabrics. So I sort of have like two different vibes that I was thinking, well, I have one that's like an outlier, and then I have two different vibes. So the first one is actually a like yellowy orange fabric. This is Hidden Treasure. This is a Lugana, and this is Hidden Treasure by Fiberlicious Yummy Fibers. This was a fabric of the month from her. And it has that like autumny feel, which I love. My one concern, and I haven't pulled the DMC yet, my one concern is that those wings are really gonna blend in. Hi, baby girl. Hi, baby girl. You guys can't see her, but my dog came up to say hi. Okay. Woo. Almost took down my ring light. All right. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So my one concern is that the wings like won't show up on this fabric. I might have to pull the DMC and see. So this is the, I think my dog just crashed into a wall. Like, I'm not really sure what's going on. It's a little, all right. Are you okay, baby girl? Are you okay? Okay, we're good, we're back. Okay. So this is the first choice. I don't think I'm gonna end up going with this one. Okay, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna end up going with this one because I think it's just gonna be too close. And also I'm already stitching Queen Bee on that yellow fabric, but it's a possibility. If people love it, like, I will consider it. I will do a floss toss maybe. I don't know, it's okay. But then my other two choices are like a sky vibe, because she has those fairy wings, or like a sea vibe for the mermaidy feel. So I have two fabrics for each, and I'm gonna keep the photo over here. So one of them is, so for the ocean vibes, I have this, which is a hand dyed by Jim Lugana. And it's like blues and sort of greens. That's a pretty accurate color. It's maybe getting a little blown out by the light. Let's see if I can bring it back here and get, yeah, that's better. So that's like a more accurate color. And this is the other side, has more blue in it. So that's a possible option for like a sea. And I felt like that was actually sort of a good balance between sky and sea, you know? So that's one color option. And here it is with the, here, I'll hold it up with the, oh my God, I'm all over the place. All right, I'll hold it up with the picture so you can see. I think the colors will work. It's very pretty. So that's one option. Then the other option, here comes a crinkle. The other option is I got a couple of pieces of Crosswing collection fabric recently. And for those of you who don't know about Crosswing collection, they actually hand paint all of their fabrics. So I believe they are also hand dyed. I'm not sure if they're dyed or just painted, but they actually paint the dye onto the fabrics. So this is a piece of the Crosswing collection. It's meant to be held horizontally, like this. And as you can see, and it's called Mari Lake. And as you can see, it has that speckling in it, and it also has those beautiful wave shapes. That's actually, it's actually painted into the fabric. And again, like, seeing this fabric on camera does not do it justice. Let me see if I can bring it closer. The weather today is really gross. So I think more, especially even more than usual, my ring light is working really hard. So I think things are getting a little blown out by the ring light, but it's just so gloomy and gray here today. Okay, so this sort of gives you a better idea. There we go. So this is what this fabric looks like. It's really beautiful, honestly. And like I said, this is a 28 count linen. And here is the picture. So again, I think those oranges, those pinks will really pop on this blue, and it would sort of give this idea that she's like floating in the waves, which I love. So that's sort of the ocean water option. And then I also have two sky options. So one of them is another painted fabric by the Crosswing collection. This is called Storm, and it was created specifically for a pattern called Winter Visitor, which I don't have, but I just thought it was perfect sky fabric, so I got it. It looks like this. Beautiful. Like, it also has a little bit, you can sort of see in here, it has almost like a little bit of like a darker patch in here, which I thought was kind of cool. I could also just do it on one of the sections that doesn't have that darker patch and sort of do it over here where there's none of that and it just looks like clouds. So this is a 28 count linen, I believe, called Storm. And now this is a little bit of a this is a much cooler blue. And again, it has that sky vibe, and here's the colors of the pattern. And so this would be a lot more like floating in the air sort of thing. And I don't know how I feel about, because this is called Autumn Blaze. And like, yes, you get skies like this in autumn, but I think this might have more of like, honestly, like a summer or a spring or even a winter feel. Like autumn tends to feel warmer to me, and this is like not very warm. And then the other sky fabric I have is from Fangirl Fibers. It's the Disney Attractions Fabric of the Month Club. It's 28 count even weave called Expedition Everest. And this is also like a blue and white, but it feels a little bit less cool to me. But again, like very similar, very, very similar color palette. That blue and white on the 28 count Lugana. Here you go. Again, gorgeous color. I could hold it that way or this way for that cloud vibe. And I think that would work too. I'm going to do some sort of fairy or pixie on these. I'm just not sure whether it's going to be her or a different one. So let me know what you think. If you think I should go more sea or more sky and which fabric you like the best. I will honestly be bringing them all with me probably to Queen City. Woo, brain fart today. To Queen City in order to show them to Melissa and get her opinion on them. Again, we're doing the Petite Pixie Sal. I'm really looking forward to starting this with her. I don't remember if she's starting this one or a different one, but I think it'll be really fun to stitch together. She's really awesome. I have to say, I feel very lucky because I feel like the people that I've met in the cross stitch community and the people that I have chosen to patronize with my business have all been like really great. You know, I mentioned in my last video when I talked about Grace Notes fabrics, like Corinne and John are honestly, genuinely like the nicest people. And like Sherry and Allison, who were also at that retreat of Bendel's Boutique, also like so kind, like really friendly. You know, Melissa is just awesome. Like, you know, I feel like I've been really lucky. Arlene from Works by ABC, like, was so generous with her time and her expertise, both at Stitch New Jersey and at Grace Notes. Like, it's just, this community has some really rad people in it, I gotta say. All right, so that is the options for my Pixie. And let me know what you think in terms of like what fabric to get for her. And next up, I'm actually going to show a project that I have fully kitted. These are actually going to be gifts for, I have two little cousins, Riley and Stella. They live in California. Right now, Riley is 8 and Stella is 4. Turning 5 soon, actually, I think. Yeah, turning 5, like in a couple of months. And I picked out, so Nora has two alphabets. One is called Letters from Nora, and that is fairies and pixies. And the other one is called, I think it's called like Letters from Mermaids, and that is all mermaids. So I picked out 2 Letters from Nora for Riley and Stella, obviously. They are R and S. Here they are, and you can see, so I decided I wanted to put them on the same piece of fabric, and you can see I like gamed out the sizes of each and how I was going to fit them to make sure that they would fit on the fabrics. So these are the 2 images. And the cool thing about the Letters from Nora series is that they actually use a lot of what used to be called crescent colors, and are now classic colorworks. So these actually are kitted in classic colorworks, Kreinik, and Mill Hill Beads. So the fabric that I chose for both of these, so if you look, they're different color palettes. Like this one is more like reds and purples, and this one is greens and blues. But you can see the background fabric is sort of like a greeny, yellowy color. And I thought, like, what would show up well on both of these? What would both of these show up well on, I'll say. And I happen to have a cut, and I wanted something sparkly. So I don't usually stitch on opalescence. I don't know that I've ever actually stitched on an opalescent. But I had this cut of Crystal Confetti by picture this plus. So it looks like this. You can see that it is an opalescent when I lean forward, and let me lean back. So this is the fabric that I chose. Here's the full fat quarter of it. Ta-da-da. And so it's a yellow background, and it has like blues and greens and the pinks in it, and I think it will look gorgeous. So I do also have the classic colorworks for those two patterns, so let me just show you. There are several that they share in common. So I'm gonna try. I'm very bad at this whole like holding up the fabric while also holding up floss and other things, but we're gonna try it. So these are the reds and pinks, and the yellow actually, that's in the letter S. So here they are. Let me do like a little fan for you. These are the classic colorworks. And these are the ones, like I said, that are just in the letter S. So here they are all together. Ta-da-da. They're beautiful. And here they are against... Just so you know, I know we all look like beautiful and polished and perfect on YouTube. We are not. Okay, so here they are against the fabric. I think they look beautiful. I feel like even this yellow, there's not a lot of this in the pattern, and I feel like even this sort of shows up against this fabric. I love these pinks. Whoop. I love this pink on here, and you can't, hold on, let me show you too. This pink has like this beautiful variegation in it, and there's like a little bit of red in there, and there's that purple. So those are going to be gorgeous. And especially because this is a gift for my family members, I really did want to do those classic colorworks colors, and do it with the variegation. And then here are the colors that are in both of them, and especially in, the letter R, and this is more of like the blues and the purples, although there is a pink in here as well. I believe that's the skin tone. So here's, oop, I can't even hold them all up at once. So let me grab them in sections here. Here's like the browns and the greens. Ooh, okay. Here's the browns and the greens all held up together. Again, the ring light blows them out a little bit, but you can see them pretty well, actually. It's not bad. I gotta cut them apart. They're still all looped together, but let's see if I can do like a pretty little fan for you. Clearly I did not think through how I was going to hold all these up. So here's the greens and the browns, and here's them on the fabric. Really, I like that a lot. And then here's like the purples and the blues, and here's the purples and the blues. There's less of these, so easier to hold up. I think those look really pretty on the fabric as well. I really love that. I think that's really nice. And then the skin tone as well. And I also just want to show off, like, these are so beautiful. So this is Vintage Violet by Classic Colorworks. Again, with that blue and the purple. As you can see, it matches my hair. Then we have Argyle Socks, which I just love. Again, blues and purples. You can see I'm into it. And then Hydrangea, which is like the light version of that with like the lavender and the blue. So really beautiful. That's going to be gorgeous. I'm excited to stitch that. And these actually are not a lot of stitches. They shouldn't take me very long. So I don't know why I've been putting off starting them. Honestly, I think it's because when I feel like I have to stitch something, it immediately makes it so I don't want to stitch it. And so because I've been saying, oh, I want to give this as a gift, I want to give this as a gift, I've been avoiding doing it. But the letters are also a really nice place to start. I will say they're a little more expensive to kit up because of the classic colorworks, and they often use Kreinik end beads, but it's not a ton of stitching. That being said, looking at this cover photo, like this is all beading, there's a lot of back stitching in here, so you do have to be prepared to do those things if you're gonna do the letters series. Okay, so continuing on with Nora Corbett patterns. So the next pattern that I have kitted up is one that I was really excited about when it came out. Fun fact, there are 12 Mirabilia and Nora Corbett releases per year, and they alternate every other month between one larger Mira pattern and usually 2 or 3 smaller Nora Corbett patterns. So, and they're always on the 15th of the month. So I think it's the odd months of the year get Miras and the even months of the year get Noras, or vice versa. I don't remember which, but it might be the other way. But this one was released pretty recently, sometime last year, I think. And this is called Moonglow. And Nora actually released 2 patterns that are both silhouettes of naked women, and she called it the Wild Floss series, which I love. There's this one, which is Moonglow, and then the other one is called Day something. Anyway, I do have both patterns, but I have this one currently kitted up. I love this pattern, and you know, I am a person who is curvy and plus sized, and I use the word fat to describe myself because I think that's what I am, and I don't see that as a negative thing, but you know, I love Nora, but sometimes the women that she draws are extremely, extremely thin. And I sort of liked that this figure had a little bit more bulk on her and was a little bit thicker than the normal Nora women. I also just love the color palette. I love this beautiful blanket. I thought the silhouette was cool. So I'm excited to stitch her. And she is very water lily heavy. So water lilies are the variegated silks that that Nora uses in her patterns, and there are a lot of water lilies. I think there are 6 of them in this pattern. So most of the blanket is done in water lilies. These plants are water lilies, and the moon, I believe, is a water lily as well. And like these roses are also done in the silks. So if you are kitting this up as called for, it does require six of those silks. And I have 2 fabric options for this. I actually had a fabric that felt very close to this cover photo. So I have a 28 count Jaslyn by Hand Dyed by Jim, which is I believe it's the old Silk Weaver, is now Hand Dyed by Jim. And here's the fabric. And if you look here, like if I hold it up, it looks very close to the color in that photo, I think. And so I thought, oh, this could be pretty. However, I then got the silks, and the thing is, so the like purple silks and the pink silks will pop really beautifully. So I'm going to put the image down. And here's like the purples and the pinks. They look gorgeous on this. Really beautiful. They pop beautifully. You can see like that variegation is gorgeous. It's really nice on that fabric. I'm into it, right? But then when I got the silks, I also looked at, so those plants going up the side, in the image, they look a lot darker than the fabric. But when I got the silks, these are the silks for that. So if you look, this silk is beautiful. It's called, let's see, Pine Forest, but it's almost exactly the shade of this fabric. Now, I still think I could do this on this fabric because all of those leaves are outlined in this, which is Midnight. And this is like beautiful. It's a little hard to see. It looks sort of gray, but if you, let's see if I can get the camera to show it. Yeah, it's like beautiful, like bluey grays and a little bit of purple in there too. It's really pretty. And so the leaves will be outlined in that darker color and then will be filled in this. And there are sections of this with like some blue, you can sort of see some blues and purples in there, but man, it's close to that fabric. I also like, I don't know, now that I've found fun fabrics, like I sort of like to do something a little different and go off the beaten path. So I do have this color and I think it would be beautiful on this. But the other option that I actually was thinking, and this was, I brought this to show to a friend and she agreed that it looked really pretty, was, this is 28 count, I think. Yes, 28 count Haunted by Picture This Plus. And this is like a greeny gray. Ooh, and that's really showing that modeling nicely. I think it's actually showing up brighter though. When I lean back, yeah, it's a pretty dark gray actually, and it's showing up. I mean, I feel like when you look at it in person, it looks a lot closer to this. This darker section is more what like the whole fabric looks like when you're looking at it in person. Let's see if you can sort of see it on the other side. Yeah, that's, I think, closer to what it looks like in person with those dark splotches. So I was actually thinking that I might do it on this fabric instead. I'm sorry about all the creases. I knew that this was going to have a lot of fabric in it, and so I did not iron all of the fabric I was going to be showing, but it means there's a lot of creases in fabric. And you can see on this, the plants actually pop a lot better, which the plants are certainly not the focus of the piece at all. And so I actually thought they were okay on the other one too, but they look nice on here. And then when you add like the other four too, like they just look really beautiful on this Haunted fabric. I do wonder, here we go, like really pretty. I do wonder if the modeling will be a little too distracting with the silhouette. Like, I'm just not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure. What do you think? So here's the pattern. Here's the fabric. There we go. What do you think? Do you think that would work nicely? Should I maybe go for like a plainer gray? I do have some dark gray fabric that's less modeled that I could potentially do. But I don't know. I do think that's pretty. And I'm not sure. What do you think? What do you think? Let me know. So that's a possibility to start. I put like a poll on my Instagram, and this pattern won the poll for what I should start. People really were into this one. And I understand why. It's pretty unique too. Like, Nora just doesn't have a lot of patterns like this, and I just think it's beautiful. I'm also thinking about potentially, I have 2 large thigh tattoos. And so I'm actually thinking about, instead of stitching these like white swirlies on her, I'm actually thinking about using black and black beading and sort of stitching a tattoo that's more like my tattoo. So that way it's like a little bit of a personal touch. So we'll see. We'll see about that. So the last set of Nora pixies that I have kitted up, well, mostly kitted up, are the seasonal pixies. So Nora has like a set of autumn pixies, and she has like the spring garden party or whatever, but she has 4 pixies that are each seasonal that I call them the seasonal pixies, and I believe they are meant to be a set. I'm not sure, but I think so. Yes, it's called the Pixie Seasons Collection. And so they are, we're going to start with autumn because that's the season that we're in. They are autumn, winter, spring, and summer. So I'll put a picture here of the 4 of them together. So my intention is to stitch these and frame them as it's not a triptych, a quadric, I don't know. But basically I want to get like a window pane frame and frame them as 4 all together in one big frame. And so I decided that I really wanted to do not a theme for the fabrics, but I wanted to do them on the same count, same type of fabric. And ideally I wanted to do them all from the same fabric dyer, or like, you know, sort of yeah, from the same fabric dyer, just to sort of keep them as a set. And while I was at the Grace Notes fabric retreat, I actually picked up 4 fabrics for this collection, which I'm very excited about. So I'm gonna pull those out and show them to you. Now for these, I do have the embellishment packs. I do not have the DMC pulled, but I could easily pull the DMC and bring them with me and start one or all of them at the retreat. Because like I said, I do have fabric for them. And I did think about going with like a neutral, going with like maybe 2 neutrals, or going with like, you know, doing them all on cream or something. And if you look, this is all of them held up together. Like, they're originally done on fairly neutral backgrounds, but that's just not, oh, here, now you can see them all together. But like, that's just not my vibe, really. So let me show you the Grace Notes fabrics that I picked up for each of these, and I'll hold up the card with the fabric so you can see. So let's start with Autumn. So this was the one that I had the most trouble choosing. So the color that I chose is called Pumpkin Pie. And I picked 28 count Lugana for this series. So this is Pumpkin Pie by Grace Notes Fabric. And this is not normally a color I would choose. I'm like not a brown person. I'm like not that into browns, whatever. But I actually thought someone was there with a full set of DMC, and I did pull all the DMC and do a floss toss. Because I just was not sure. And I do think that these colors will just pop beautifully on this brown fabric. I also think that these wings will actually stand out nicely on this fabric. The edges of the wings are pretty light, and so I'm hoping that they won't get lost. So that is my Autumn pick, is the Pumpkin Pie. And again, all of these are going to be on 28 count Lugana. So then for winter, I chose a color called Accidental, which I believe was from their Fabric of the Month line. Now, originally, if I were not doing these as a seasonal set, I probably would not have picked up winter. These like light colors are not really me. Like I'm not really a winter person either. But again, to do the whole set, I thought would be really beautiful. And actually I saw a picture of her online stitched on darker fabric, and seeing the light colors really pop on the darker fabric made me really love this pattern. Love might be a strong word, but made me really appreciate this pattern. So I also pulled a darker fabric. So this is Accidental by Grace Notes Fabric, and I am going to be stitching the winter seasonal pixie on here. And you can see, I think that those colors will really pop nicely on this. I will probably pick like a dark section of this piece and try to do her on like a dark section. So that's winter on Accidental. So then, I don't know if y'all noticed, but I really love pink. And so for spring, I was like, all right, she has pink in her. I love pink. I gotta do pink for spring. And so I chose this beautiful pink. I actually also bought another piece of this, I think in linen, because I just love the color so much. So this is Jane Bell by Grace Notes. This is the 28 count Lugana version, so it's a little bit more muted than the piece of linen that I have. But I love this pink. And it is a little bit brighter. Here, let me lean back and see if that helps. I don't know. It is a little bit brighter than it's coming out. Oop. It is a little bit brighter than it's coming out in the ring light. Here is probably your best bet, but it is sort of like a deeper pink than you're seeing, I think. And here is the spring pixie up against that pink. So I feel like when you see it on the camera, it looks like her skirt might blend in, but actually because this is sort of close to like what the actual color is. And I feel like if you imagine it a little bit deeper, like it is just going to be, it's just going to be beautiful. I'm very excited about it. So that's gorgeous. And I think the purples and like these beautiful like reddish oranges are gonna pop on this pink. I'm like really excited about it. Alrighty. So that's spring, sorry. And then summer. Now I really was torn about summer because summer is greens and I was like, oh, am I going to do it on a green? Like maybe a light green? I don't know. But summer is like both cool greens and warm greens. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then someone suggested this, which is white peach tea. This is again, 28 count Lugana. And here it is on the white peach tea. Beautiful. I think those greens are gonna look so good on that yellow, and that yellow is like such a nice summery color. I think it's gonna be just gorgeous. So that's what I chose for summer. And let me see if I can hold them all up together in a foursome so you can see them all. I don't think I can get the like actual patterns in them, but here's all the fabric. So this is spring, winter, fall. So here they all are together. And I'm not sure yet how they're gonna go in the frame. Like, again, I wanna do a window pane ideally. So maybe like spring, fall, winter. Wait, I think I wanna do them like this. And do like spring, fall, winter, summer, like that, basically, in the frame. I'm not sure yet. But I think they do look, but here's all of them together. I think they do, maybe I'll do them as a foursome like this. That might be cool. But I do think these four colors look nice together. I like them. I think they coordinate nicely. I think they will look very good in a frame together. Let me know what you think. If you disagree and think that I should do these on a more neutral fabrics, like by all means, please do share that. I'm open to considering that still. I do really love these fabrics, so I will obviously use them for something. But yeah, that's my plan, at least as of right now. And like I said, I do have the embellishment packs for those. So for those of you who have not seen Nora, Corbett, and Mirabilia, she does sell embellishment packs. So it's just the beads and treasures. And you can buy them as a pack instead of having to buy each of the beads separately. I prefer to do this because A, I think it can be hard to find all of the beads in stock at one place. And B, these have the number that you need. So if you need 3 packs of something, if you need, 2 packs of treasures or whatever, like the embellishment packs will have what you need in them. So I tend to buy the embellishment packs as opposed to buying the beads separately, which is probably going to mean that I end up with several beads where I have like, 4 tins of them or something because they came in so many packs. But I just like it does cost more, but I like the comfort of knowing that like I have everything. It's all in one place. It's all together. Like we're good, So yeah, so those are my pixies, and that is all of the Nora Corbetts, at least, that I have currently kitted up and mostly ready to go. Okay, so those are all of my kitted up Nora Corbett patterns, and now we are moving on to my Mirabilia patterns. Now, I don't know if you could tell this from the pieces that I showed earlier, but like I said, Mirabilia is the big sister, the older cousin, the queen to Nora Corbett's princess / pixies. So Mirabilias are larger and they are usually more complex. I shouldn't say they are more complex. They're much larger patterns. The thing is, the product photos are the same size. So you don't realize when you see a Mira pattern just how much larger an actual stitched Mira is. But these are much, much larger patterns. So for example, my Ophelia's Pearl Mermaid was stitched on 1/8 of fabric. You absolutely could not fit a Mira on 1/8. So I am going to be showing the Miras that I currently have kitted up. The other thing to know about Mirabilia is that occasionally Witchelt, the company that owns the rights to these patterns, does put certain patterns out of print. Out of print patterns tend to be Stitcher's unicorns and can be really hard to find. I will be showing a couple of out of print patterns that I have purchased on the secondary market from other Stitchers that are in my collection. I would encourage you to keep an eye out for them. Again, they're very hard to find for reasonable prices, unfortunately. But there are many, many patterns that are not discontinued that are beautiful. So I am going to start with the 2 out of print patterns that I have kitted up currently. And actually they're the only 2 that I have in my collection. And the first one is actually the second Mirabilia pattern that was ever released, and it's called the Fairy Moon. So let me grab that out of the bag. Again, sorry for the crinkles. But so this is the Fairy Moon by Mirabilia. You can actually see someone wrote MB2 on the pattern, and you can see, I mean, obviously this was pre-owned, like there's like tape on it, someone put like a sticker on it or something, I don't know. But I don't care, the pattern is still lovely. So so this is Fairy Moon. She's beautiful. I love her. Again, I mentioned earlier, I love weddings and wedding dresses. And when I initially bought her, I partially got her because I felt like her dress was like that white dress that almost looked like bridal. And I also thought about potentially doing like a color conversion on her shawl and stuff and doing her in all whites to be like a bridal figure. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stitch her as charted. But this is Fairy Moon. And I do have her fully kitted up, and the fabric that I have chosen for her was a fabric of the month by Fiberlicious Yummy Fibers, and it's called Ashes to Ashes. So instead of doing her on like a lighter color like it is on here, I mean, her name is Fairy Moon. I don't understand why they stitched her on a light color, to be honest. To be fair, this pattern came out in 1993. So this pattern is 30 years old, which is wild to think about. Yeah, so it's 30 years old, this pattern. And I'm not sure what kind of, I mean, they certainly did not have the variety of hand-dyed fabrics that are available now. I don't know what the fabric situation was with Witchelt back then. But it's even hard to see in this product photo. Again, the product photo is not good, but you can see there's like these like swirlies and these beautiful like moons in here, and you cannot really see them on the light fabric. So I chose a darker gray for Fairy Moon. So I chose Ashes to Ashes by Fiberlicious Yummy Fibers. I am stitching her on a 32 count Lugana. I like stitching on Lugana, and I wanted that like softer color for Fairy Moon. And I actually got this in fabric of the month, but Fairy Moon is essentially like a square pattern. And because of where the moon is placed, it would have been a really tight margin. I don't mind tight margins. Like I will stitch with fairly tight margins, but especially for Mirabilia, especially for something that like I don't want to start it and then be like, oh shit, I ran out of space. So I chose to get a fat half for this one. And even on a 32 count, like it needs to be on a fat half. Not all of Nora's patterns are that way. Like you saw, my Queen Bee is on a fat quarter. But so this is Ashes to Ashes. It's like a deep gray fabric. I really like the color. There's not a lot of modeling. It's meant to let the pattern shine. So this is the deep gray, and my thought was to stitch her on this deep gray. Now, I am feeling a little bit torn because I do love this color, but again, it's a very plain fabric. And there is a part of me that is wondering, like after seeing the way that Haunted looked with the Moon Glow. I'm like almost wondering if I should see if I can find like a half yard of Haunted. So this is the gray. I think the gray will be a beautiful choice, but I wonder if it's like a little boring. Which, like, again, it's not a bad thing because it's nice to let the stitching shine. That being said, like, this dress is a lot of light colored stitching. It's like a one solid color. So, like, I wonder about putting a little bit more modeling in the fabric. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, if that would be like a good choice for this. Let me actually grab that piece of Haunted. And I know it's sort of tough to tell with just the picture. I do have the DMCs for that, and I will pull them and see. But see, there's something about this that's like, it's pretty. You know? Although Haunted has like a green undertone to it, and I don't know that I love the green undertone for like a sky. So actually, there's a color that I bought that I was actually thinking I would do Lilith of Labrador on. It's a Grace Notes. It's a mystery Grace Notes. Hold on. I have all my fabric out for all of these. So here's the mystery Grace Notes piece. And this is a fat, it's a 32 count fat half. And here's the, but this is so modeled. Like, I just don't know about, like, that doesn't feel very sky-y to me. I don't know. Yeah, I don't love that. I feel like the fabric is distracting. So I don't know. I've been wanting to start her, but I think I've been sort of hesitating because I don't love my fabric choices. So I might keep working on figuring out a fabric for her. I do think the gray is pretty. It's just not, I don't know. I'm wondering if it's like a little boring. That being said, like, plain fabric, not a bad thing either. So, you know. And I do hope that someday I will get this stitched and be able to pass this to another stitcher who really wants to stitch it. Again, I was lucky enough to be able to afford it on the secondary market. It's expensive. But like, I would love for someone else to have an opportunity to stitch it who like really loves this pattern. So that's Fairy Moon. I do have that fully kitted. So I have all the DMC, I have all the beads, like I have everything I could need for that. So that's exciting. And then the second out of print pattern that I have is, this was my unicorn pattern. And this is Villa Mirabilia. And you want to talk about a big dress? She is a big dress. So this is Villa Mirabilia, or Via Mirabilia, depending on, I guess, where you're from. See that big dress? So pretty. And actually, I don't even know if I'm going to stitch this like weird plant thing in the background and all that. I don't really care about the weird plant thing in the background. I just want to stitch her. And I feel like you kind of have to stitch the bottom because the ribbon like goes along the bottom, but I don't even really care about the bottom. This dress is so beautiful. Oh. So, okay, so I actually initially bought this. This is a copy of the pattern that I bought, again, on the secondary market. Now, I actually originally found a kit, a Villa Mirabilia kit being sold for, I think, $85. I don't remember where I bought it from, but when I received it, this was the cover photo that I got. And the pattern was just copied onto like white paper, big sheets of white paper, and it literally it came with this linen. No, not even linen. It came with this fabric, which is just like a plain gray Lugana. I think it's a fat half. Yep. It's a fat half of plain gray Lugana. And it came with all of the flosses on cards. Literally like this. Now, I know that there are some Miras that were sold as kits. And I know that, and this is DMC. I can tell from the feel of it, and also the colors match. Now I know, and again, I know that there were some Mirabilias that were sold as kits. I don't think this was one of them. So I'm pretty sure this was not a legit kit that I purchased, which is why I went ahead and repurchased the pattern, because it didn't feel right to stitch it off of a pirated pattern. I will admit I did not like do my due diligence and check before I bought the kit, but once I did buy it like pretty early in my stitching career, and like once I knew that this was probably not legit, I ended up purchasing it. I ended up repurchasing the pattern. I still might actually use the floss and maybe even use the fabric, but I wanted to get a legit copy of the pattern. So yeah, that's Villa Mirabilia. Again, that big dress is gorgeous. Although I will be honest, I think it's going to be a while before I stitch her, because after that big queen bee dress, like, I need a break from the big dresses. I love her, and I love a big dress, and you'll see I have several other Miras with big dresses, but whew. And like the Villa Mirabilia dress and the Queen Bee both have like the checkerboard pattern in their dresses, so it's like a similar kind of stitching. I don't know. I think that one's not gonna happen for a little bit. So the next pattern that I have all kitted up that I am debating on fabric for is Princess Eliana. She is relatively new. She came out in 2021, I want to say. A lot of people have stitched her. A lot of people have stitched her with a darker skin conversion. So Nora uses the same like 3 or 4 colors for her skin tones over and over again. She uses 754, 758, and 948, I think. So a lot of people have done skin conversions for a lot of the different patterns, and you know, sort of like interchangeable skin conversions that you can use instead of those colors. So I've seen several really beautiful skin conversions of her. And there is a woman who is a black stitcher who did a black skin conversion on her that is gorgeous, on Princess Eliana, that is gorgeous. And I think I'm probably going to stitch it using that skin conversion. Because it gets sort of boring, like the same skin tones over and over again get sort of boring. Sort of like stitching like very skinny people over and over again gets sort of boring. But I just love Eliana. Like, this dress is gorgeous. All her colors are beautiful. Eliana uses no metallics. She uses all of the new, so she came out when the new DMC colors came out, 1 through 35, and she uses every color of 1 through 35, including other colors. But she uses every color of 1 through 35, and she has a fuck ton of beads. Her bead pack is huge, probably because there's no metallic, so it's just all beading. She's also very long, so I actually, hold please, I'm gonna grab the pattern because now I want to see. All right, I'm back. Okay, so yeah, so her stitch count is 174 by 325, and on 32 count, she's 20.25 inches by 11 inches tall. So she is long. She is long. So you need either a fat half for her. Well, actually, I guess you could do her on a fat quarter. It would be tight, but you could, I think, do her on a fat quarter of 32. I don't know though. Ugh. Anyway, I would either do her on a fat half or get like a weird long cut for her. And yeah, she has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 55, 56. She has over 60 colors of DMC in her, so she's a lot to kit up for sure. And she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different types of beads, 2 different types of Mill Hill treasures, and several of those you need multiple packs. So that's, let's see, like 16 bead packs or something. It's a lot. She's a lot to kit up. But she is beautiful, and I do definitely want to stitch her. And I have 2 fabric possibilities for her. So I got this. This is actually, remember I said earlier, you can stitch a mirror on anything. This is actually a 14 count Ada. It was a one-of-a-kind, one-off cut by Silk Weaver. It's 18 inches by 28 inches, so it's long. And I'm trying to see, you can't really, I hate when the ring light blows things out, because this is beautiful. It's like cotton candy colors. So it's like pinks and blue and a little bit of purple in there. Let's see if getting closer, I can like fold it and see if we can get a more like true to color kind of. Let's see. No, that just blows it out more. I wonder if I put it against, you're seeing me do lots of color experimenting here. I have like an old calendar. Let's see if I drape it over here. Okay, that helps a little, I think. Yeah, that helps a little. So you can see it has some like pink and some blue. So it's sort of, again, those cotton candy colors. And here's, I think that would be pretty on there. Yeah, I think that would be pretty on there. And then my other thought was, because she doesn't have any beading in her, I mean, other way, she doesn't have any metallics in her. I also was thinking it might be fun to do her on an opalescent, and I got this piece of opalescent Lugana. I think it's a fat half of, or might not be a fat half, but it's a big piece of opalescent Lugana from Fiber Arts Amy, who incidentally now has her own fabric dyeing business and has a website and everything, and it's called Oak and Crown, I believe. I'll put it below. Anyway, she makes gorgeous fabrics. This is a fabric that she dyed. It's an opalescent Lugana. It's like blue and purpley. Oh, my dog is back. She usually does not come visit while I'm filming. Hello. 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 I would show her to you guys, but my phone is like in a thing. And anyway, I'll insert a photo here of her cuteness so you know what I get to look at every day. Okay, so yeah, so this is an opalescent Lugana, although now that I'm looking at this piece, I thought this was a fat half, but I don't think this is a full fat. I don't think this is gonna be long enough. Okay, well, if it is long enough, this is also a possibility. But it is 28 count. So that's the only thing. I need a measuring, I'm gonna need to measure this and see if it's even a possibility. But yeah, so those are my two thoughts for Eliana. Here you go. I don't remember if I did this yet, but here you go. Here's Eliana on that. Here's the colors on that fabric. I think that'd be pretty. Yeah. So there we go. That's Eliana. She's beautiful. I feel like a few years ago, a lot of people stitched her, and then like, because she was like the new pattern and everyone was really excited about her. And then lately I've not seen as many people working on her, but I love all her colors, and she's beautiful. And like all the different sections of this dress, like you can see there's like all different patterns in the dress, and whoosh, beautiful. I love her. Okay. So I got three more, and then we're good. So very recently I saw, I think it was Lollipop Stitches is stitching Lilith of Labrador, and I have never wanted to stitch a Mirror Mermaid. For some reason, I'm just like not that into any of the Mirror Mermaids. There's a few that I sort of like, but not as much as like the queens and the other ladies. However, Lilith of Labrador is very unique in her mermaid collection. So first of all, she is meant to be a cold water mermaid, and she has purple skin actually. And she's all of these like purple colors and like these and she has this beautiful huge tail. And she's sort of like a dark spooky mermaid almost, which I love. And oh, each of the Mira patterns come with like a little paragraph about the woman. And so Lilith of Labrador says, from Newfoundland to Nantucket, she is the icy sea of Labrador and all of its currents. Like any fish, and like some people, where she lives depends on the season. And And so just the thought of her being like an Arctic mermaid, I thought was very cool. So this is Lilith of Labrador. I actually ordered, I've never stitched on no, that's not true actually. I have one piece of Bestitch Me fabric, but I actually ordered a couple of pieces of fabric from Bestitch Me for her along with her embellishment pack. I'm waiting for them to come in before I start her. But I'm very excited to stitch her. She is beautiful. And I did pick up, so if I don't like either of those pieces of Bestitch Me, I did pick up, I mentioned this piece of mystery linen. Linen? Yes, mystery linen from Grace Notes. I did pick this up as well because I thought it would be beautiful for her. I kind of love the modeling for a mermaid because it has that like icy, like sea water feel to it. So yeah, that's Lilith of Labrador. And she has 2 skeins of water lilies in her. 2 skeins of the same color water lilies in her that I believe is in her tail. And here are the 2, those are the 2 water lilies up against that fabric. So, you know, it's close in some ways, and the blue, there's blues in here that are close, but then it has like that green to it, which I really like. I don't know if it's too close though. So I do want to wait and see like what I think of the Bestitch Me fabrics before I start her. I am someone who likes to have all the stuff. Like, I'm aware that even if I started her today, I probably wouldn't beat her for another year. But like the fact that I don't have the embellishment pack means I don't want to start her because she's not fully kitted. Which again is funny because I don't, like I have all these projects where I have the embellishment packs but don't have fabric or DMC, and ultimately what I need to stitch them are fabric and DMC, and the embellishments can come later. But like, I think I just have paranoia about not being able to get them, and I don't have a lot of confidence in my ability to like substitute or replace, especially beads. Right now I'm going through that. I have 2 patterns from Owl Forest that have beads in them, and they are Russian patterns, and they use like European bead makers and Toho beads also, which are Japanese, and you like can't get them anywhere, and it's a huge pain in the butt, and I'm gonna have to replace all these beads and these patterns, and it like stresses me out. So I just want to have the stuff. I just want to have it all, so that way I know I can do it and I've got it and we're good. Oh boy, that's the dog. She hears something. Alrighty then. The dog is taken care of, and now we're back. 2 more to go, guys. All right, so first off, Nightingale, which is a relatively new pattern. I think she came out like late last year. She is, again, big dress, beautiful. Here she is. She's actually meant, if you look, you can see the little blue cross on her arm and the lantern. She's actually meant to be a tribute to Florence Nightingale, who was a nurse, a very famous nurse from, I think, World War I era. Anyway, beautiful, big dress. Love her. She's gorgeous. I'm not really a green person. I don't love this green fabric. I appreciate that they're trying to, like, put her on a more interesting fabric, but not really for me. Now, when I was at the Grace Notes fabric retreat, someone, I think it was Nikki had actually started her on, I want to say it was raspberry milkshake or raspberry latte or raspberry milkshake. I don't know. But anyway, I did get a piece of raspberry latte as well. And here it is. And it's actually, it's like a pinky neutral. I don't know how well it's showing up in the camera. It looks a little browner. Here, I'll lean back a little. It looks a little browner in the camera than it actually is. It's more of like a pinky color. But it does sort of lean towards brown. Anyway, not necessarily what I would have originally thought of for Nightingale, but seeing Nikki's start on a piece similar made me think, huh, that could be really pretty. And the blue really pops on this. So that was a thought for Nightingale. And then I did also pull 2 other pieces of fabric for her. I have a color called Butterfly Tea, which is like a purpley, bluey. Let's see, let's lean back here. Sorry, like I said, the ring light today is really blowing out these colors in a way that is unfortunate. I almost want to like put them in the shade or something because I feel like that gives you a more accurate color. Hold on, let me see if I can do that. Let's see if that helps. No, I just look like I'm hiding. Okay, anyway, sorry, that was weird. Y'all, I'm tired today. I wanted to get this filmed and I do want to have it filmed and I want to put it up, but whew, I'm tired. Okay, I've been doing a lot of talking. All right, so this is called Butterfly Tea. It's, again, hard to see in the camera, but it's like a purpley, it's like a very light purpley, like a cool purpley color. Again, I think this would really pick up the blue nicely. And if you look in her dress, there's a lot of like yellowy, creamy colors. And I think that would stand out nicely against this cool fabric. However, the piece that I have of this is a 28 count and it's a fat quarter. And she's, again, sort of long. I don't know if she would fit on the fat quarter of 28 count. So if I do decide to go with the Butterfly Tea, I'm gonna have to get a bigger piece, I think. And then the other option that I pulled, also by Grace Notes Fabric, is called the Gray Stuff, which is a little bit of a deeper color. Again, this is a very cool toned gray. And here it is. It's beautiful. And actually, now that I'm pulling this out here, I'm like, maybe I could stitch Fairy Moon on this. And this is actually a fat half. I just wonder if it's like a little light for Fairy Moon. maybe I'll do a floss toss for Fairy Moon on this because this is pretty. But there's this. I do think this would be gorgeous for her. So I did think, so she's carrying a lantern. Because the idea is like she's a nurse and lighting the way, whatever. And so I did think about doing her on like a darker fabric to like make the lantern stand out, and it makes sense because lantern, whatever. But I don't know. First of all, stitching on darker fabric is hard. And for Lilith of Labrador, I'm like, I can't possibly do her on anything but a dark fabric. But for something like Nightingale, if I can do a lighter fabric, like I think I would like to do that. This is as dark as I would go for her, I think. I do like this though, but now I'm wondering, I'm gonna look at the Fairy Moon colors on this too and see. But that's, so for Nightingale, those are my options. Looking at them again, I do like both Butterfly Tea and the Raspberry Latte. Here's the two of them next to each other. That might give you a better idea color-wise. Yeah, okay. So there we go. Yeah, one is warm, one is cool. I also will say I tend to gravitate towards warm colors, and so I'm also trying to branch out a little bit and do some of the cooler colors. I'm wondering too about raspberry. See, now that I'm like pulling these all out together, like what about Raspberry Latte for Eliana? That could be interesting. That could be interesting. We're percolating here because that could be cool, I think, actually. Huh. Something to think about. Okay. Something to think about. But yeah, so Butterfly Tea, the Gray Stuff, beautiful. Very pretty. That's for Nightingale. I have everything but the DMC for her. But I do have a full set of DMC. So ultimately I can pull from those. Or sometimes, honestly, for these, I will just buy a complete new set so it can just live in the bag. We'll see. Whew, one more, y'all. One more. And last but not least, Cathedral Woods Goddess, who originally I had no desire to stitch. I'm not really a nature person, whatever. But then I saw a bunch of people stitching her, including Licking Floss, who has an awesome Flosstube. You should go watch her. And Julie, Kansas City girl in a Colorado world, who we all know and love. And Cathedral Woods Goddess looks like these. Again, terrible photo. This photo especially, like, does not do her justice. She is super shiny. She uses a lot of Krynic. You cannot really see it in the photo, but there's like several Mill Hill treasures in her antlers. And like the she's just beautiful stitched. Like I said, go look at Licking Floss or Kansas City Girl in a Colorado World and you can see she's just beautiful. So I decided that I wanted to stitch her. I am using Megan, the Wide-Eyed Stitcher, did like a slightly deeper skin conversion on her that Julie used, that I am also going to use. And so I have her. And again, I did think about doing her on the light fabric as sort of a way to make her stand out, but her name is Cathedral Woods Goddess. So I was like, oh, I obviously have to do her on like a woodsy fabric. So I pulled a choice. Now this is like sort of an out there choice, but hear me out. So this is actually Lagoon by Picture This Plus. It's showing up a little bit greener here than it looks in real life, but it's actually pretty true to color. So this is Lagoon. And I actually thought this might be perfect. So my one concern was, if you look at that background color, I wonder if it's like a little close to her dress. So I do actually have, let me pull the DMCs for this. So these are the colors in her dress. And I feel like they pop against the brown, but they do not pop against that green background. So that is my concern, is that those will blend in. I'm also a little nervous about, so these are the silks for, let me grab the silks for her too, because that will help as well. So these are the two silks for her. So this is Slate. And this is Copper. And when you put the slate up here, and the slate is used in a lot of the like leafy, see these like leafy branches over here? The slate is used in there quite a bit, those green leafy branches. And when you put this slate up against this fabric, hold on. I'm worried that, so the purples stand out really nicely, but I'm worried that like the green parts are just gonna disappear. But I just feel like this fabric is so, she's a woods goddess, you know? Like it feels like I need to put, and I'm sort of like, well, even if she does blend into the fabric, like she's a woods goddess, that's the whole point. But also I don't want people to not notice how awesome my stitching is. So what do you think? What do we think of this for Cathedral Woods Goddess? And it's funny too, because now that I'm looking once again, I'm like, huh, that raspberry latte could be a good neutral for her too. So let's see. Let me put her up against the raspberry latte. You know, I don't hate that either. I really don't. So that might be a good option if I decide not to go for the like big, bold, dark color. So yeah, that's everything. Let me know what you think. I know I gave you lots of things to think about, so feel free to select one of them and give me feedback, or give me feedback on all of them. I love it. I want to hear what you have to say. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there with me through this. I do have a whole stash of Mira and Nora patterns that I have not even shown. But I'm pretty sure this video is going to be like over an hour, even without showing those. But yeah, you know what? See, but I'm like, I can't do a parade without showing those patterns. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to clean up all of this stuff everywhere. And then I will do a flip through of all of the patterns that I have. Cool. I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay. So this is my next kit is Persephone, and this is another Mira that I liked her, but I wasn't super interested in her. And then I saw Maggie Kitty Whips's, then I saw Maggie Kitty Whips showed her on her Flosstube, and she was doing her on like a teal fabric. And when she showed all the different DMC colors, I realized how much teal and how many rich colors were actually in Persephone. and I instantly wanted to stitch her. So here's a picture. Again, the photo does not do her justice, but you can see if you look closely, like there's lots of blues and teals in here. There's like pinks in her hair and in all these flowers, and then you have the backdrop. And for those of you who are not familiar with Greek mythology, Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, who is the goddess of spring, and she went down to Hades' lair, the underworld, and she ate a pomegranate off of a tree from Hades' lair, and it meant that she was bound to stay in the underworld. And Demeter was so devastated that she wreaked havoc and winter on the land, and eventually Demeter and Hades came to an agreement that they would each get Persephone for half of the year. So the half of the year that Persephone is in the underworld is the cold months, the months where nothing can grow, and the half the year where Persephone is with her mother is spring and summer, where everything is blooming. There have been many, many wonderful tellings of this story and some really beautiful retellings of this story. I think there's I want to say it's called Lore Olympus, I believe, is actually like a telling of this story. It's a webcomic that has been really popular lately. Hades and Persephone actually also appear in the musical Hadestown, which is a retelling of the myth of Orpheus. And Orpheus and, oh God, what is the girl's name? I don't remember. I want to say Euripides, but that's not it. But yeah, the retelling of the story of Orpheus and his wife. But this is just, yeah, she's beautiful. I love these colors. Again, big, beautiful dress. And she has some really pretty detailing, like in her hair. And so here I have all the DMC in a baggie, as you can see. Many colors, very, very colorful. You can see those teals. And so initially I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll do her on the teal like Maggie. And then I thought, you know what? Like, the story of Persephone and Hades is like a much darker story. And also, like, when I thought about sort of like the colors of the underworld, right, you're thinking like rich, deep colors. And again, I feel like this dress would really stand out on a darker color. Now, it might make these background motifs blend in more, but I sort of like that. So I actually pulled, this is a fabric of the month color from Fiberlicious Yummy Fibers. This is called Skyfall. And I thought this would be, it's showing up pretty bright. It feels much deeper in person. But I actually thought this would be a beautiful backdrop for like these teals and those like brighter pinks. I think that will be really beautiful. And the background motifs are actually stitched in, I believe it's this color, Black Forest, which is like brown, purpley browns, purples and browns, purpley browns. And it is deeper than it's showing up, again, thanks to the ring light. But when I hold that up against this fabric, you can actually see it. It does blend in a bit more than it would on like a brighter fabric, but that does show up. And so I actually think that would be really pretty on this fabric. So that's what I'm thinking for Persephone. And I have her, like I said, fully kitted, and I'm going to start her soon, I think. She's the one that I feel sort of like most comfortable starting soon, I think, because I feel like settled on a fabric. I have everything all set up. The other one is Cathedral Woods Goddess. I would love to start too, but it's just such a hard choice because I have everything for Princess Eliana too. I just have to settle on a fabric. So yeah, lots of all good choices to have. All good choices to have. All right, y'all, here is my binder of Mira and Nora patterns that I have not yet kitted up. I do actually have embellishment packs for many of these, meaning that I have the beads and I sometimes have Krynic or water lilies if they're required. That's the silks, but I do not have fabric or DMC for these yet. And I just wanted to do a flip through and show you the patterns that I have. So we're gonna start with the ones that I do have embellishments for. And this is Lady Orchid Moth, love her pinks. This is Floral Dream. This is the daytime version of Moon Glow, that other wild floss pattern. Miss Moth. This is Harmony. There's a music series. You'll see several of those in here. Sorry, here's Harmony. There's Lyrical. These are from the Poison Pixie series. This is White Clover, Angel White Trumpet, and Monkshood, I think. I do love the Poison Pixies. There is also, yeah, I don't have her. There's a fourth one called Poison Ivy as well. This is Amaryllis and Gardenia from the Spring Garden Party series. Then we have Cherry Blossom and Iris. Buttercup. Snapdragon, who I love on Snapdragon. You can see those beautiful translucent wings. I think that's a gorgeous detail. I'm really excited to stitch her. She might be the next pixie that I do. And then here we are in my section where it says pattern only. So that means that these are ones where I don't actually have the embellishment packs. I just have the patterns. Sorry about the shadows, the light's coming in from the window. So my arm is making a weird shadow. So this is Caprice. She's part of that musical series I was talking about. Oh, surprise, I do in fact have Poison Ivy. She's the last of the Poison Pixies. I just don't have a materials pack for her yet. Orchid, she's in that Spring Garden Party series. Sweet Pea. And then here is my Mirabilia collection. Here is Botanical Gardens. I want to do a color conversion on her, take out some of those greens and maybe put in like some deeper jewel tones potentially. This is called Tree of Life. I love this pattern. This is a little bit different from some of Nora's other stuff, but I think the tree is absolutely gorgeous and I just love the idea of stitching a tree of life for sure. The Snow Maiden, she has tons of beads and sparklies. I am not normally a winter person, but I just think she's beautiful. And this is Stargazer. She is a classic. She's actually, for Amira, she's a pretty quick stitch. A lot of people have done color conversions on her, have done a different colored dress. I almost definitely would. I'm not hugely into the brown. And I would probably do her in a dark colored fabric because there's a lot of like swirlies of beads and stuff in there. So there's Stargazer, and there is Lady of the Mist. She is also a pattern that I would want to convert. I think I want to move towards like a purple dress to match the ribbons or a mauve dress to match the ribbons. There's actually a whole group on Facebook called, I think it's called like Mira Full Conversions, where people post conversions that they've done of Mirabilia patterns with like complete color conversions, especially of like different colored dresses and things like that. And actually, Lady of the Mist and Stargazer are two patterns that I won in the raffle at the Grace Notes Fabrics Retreat. And I think that's it. That's it. Yep, that is my whole collection. Thank you guys so much for watching me and for joining me for this very long kit and pattern and finish extravaganza. And I look forward to hearing from you all, and I hope you have a wonderful day and keep on stitching. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, that. Have a good one, guys. Bye.